Our armchair dialogue will bring us together with views from important stewards. Louis Vachon, the CEO of National Bank, Doug Guzman, again from RBC, Mark Carney, under the able moderation of Walid Solomon. Over to you, Walid.
Well, thank you very much, Kate, and thank you all very much for joining us today. And congratulations, Mark, on your award. I've been very much looking forward to this, and I think this should be a real delight for our audience members. We have Doug Guzman, who is, for those who don't know him, is really one of the luminaries of capital markets and banking in Canada. We've got Louis Vachon, who runs the National Bank of Canada, and of course our honoree tonight, Mark Carney. And I think I'm really just going to get right into it, and I'll start with you, Louis. The most important thing that I think our audience members are interested in hearing about is where things are going with COVID. Now, maybe I'll start with this. What do we need to do now that our political and business leaders are not doing in Canada?
Well, that's a great question to start with. Thanks for that. Merci beaucoup. I think I'll answer in French. Listen, let's start with, I'll give you a bit of a political answer, but let's start with what we've done well, because I think that's important. Having gone through the 2008 crisis with Mark, I think Canada deserves very good marks again for how we reacted to this crisis. Again, a global crisis. I look at the speed of reaction on the monetary side. Governor Polas and Deputy Governor Wilkins, really moved very quickly. I think the different levels, the federal government, the provincial governments, in a crazy, volatile, with imperfect information, came out with many programs. And the worst thing they could have done would have been to be paralyzed, and they were not paralyzed. And I think they moved very quickly. So I think we had a large amount of monetary and fiscal stimulus in the system. I think by and large, and it was, uneven, sometimes, a little messy, but I think in large, I think our healthcare system stayed a course, was operational. There was unfortunately some too many deaths in the nursing home side, but aside from that, I think by and large, our healthcare system in Canada has done very well. The next big challenge, obviously, is how you're going to manage vaccination, and that is, and it's not just the logistics of it; it's how are you going to prioritize it, the sourcing of it, and everything else, and how you're going to. The biggest challenge going forward is, again, we don't have a roadmap for this. How do you move an economy and fiscal policy out of of a very stimulus environment, but as you move out of a pandemic, what speed do you change? What speed do you reduce the spending and the stimulus in the system? So I think that's the big challenge going forward.
So, Doug, how do you feel Canada has fared economically during the crisis?
Yeah, I'd pick up on Louis' the theme he started with, which I couldn't agree more. The level of cooperation, and this is the same really in both crises. I think the level of cooperation, certainly between what I saw most of, which is banks, our bank, and government, our banks, and other banks, recognizing that the plumbing for all of this assistance was through our colleagues in the retail bank, and we didn't have systems to do that. And I think there's something about the structure of government business relations in Canada that when the going gets tough, people really, really pull together. Agree also in terms of the need for near-term manic focus on the virus right now. And as we do that, continuing to optimize as best as possible fiscal support for those who need it, and trying to find the balance between that you read about in the paper every day between entrepreneurs and big box retailers. I think as we get out of this, though, there are some really, really big issues around income disparity. The winner-take-all result that is quite possible out of this, the move to digital, which will favor it will favor sort of non-domestic platform companies. Some really big issues I think the country's going to have to turn their mind to, start to now. But for now, I think it's continue to focus where we have for the bumps in the road, which I agree with Louis, there have been. I mean, if you look at unemployment, if you look at where we are in wave 2, it's a lot better than where we were in wave 1. The pain is out there, and I'm not understanding any of the pain, both for the families who've had illness and death, but people's businesses have been lost, people's jobs have been lost. But this time around in the second wave, it's a little more focused around certain industries. A lot have been back to work, and so I'd give the system pretty good grades in the near term, a clear focus in sort of the next little bit, and then I think some big issues come out the end of this.
So, Mark, you've had an incredible global career in multiple economic capitals around the world. How do you think Canada has fared through COVID, and what do you think Western nations haven't been doing that maybe they should be doing right now?
Let me just associate myself with Louis and Doug's comments. So all of those comments and kind of do the look forward. And I think, Waleed, you started with what can we all do, and I think let's keep that element of we all, because one of the reasons why Canada's done well, and one of the things, the positives we could take from this is that sense of solidarity, people trying to solve the problem together, and that's true on a family level, a community level, provinces and federal government, business, and like that's all there, and that's all good. Okay, first point. Second is, so I think the challenge comes is which is here now, which is where are we going? Economy of the past, economy of the future. How do we build off of the solidarity that has been demonstrated and the solidarity we're going to need? Because of course, what has been exposed in Canada and more so in many other jurisdictions, I'll say this, for the UK. Certainly the US, is the inequities in our society, inequities in terms, the hit of the virus is very asymmetric. It's not just industries, but it's by socioeconomic groups, racialized groups, certain regions, and it's quite striking. The educational impact of this is the differentials. I think colleagues on the on today's event know this well, have been huge. So we need to try to bring everybody together out of it, and that takes the trends that Doug referenced, the digitization. So how are we going to make digital economy work better for all? How are we going to help workers move? How are we going to support workers, not jobs, so workers move to the jobs of the future? How are we going to build a sustainable economy? Because of course, one of the lessons everyone has, or most people have taken, is, boy, resilience really matters. There might be a shark that comes, so we need to be resilient if the shark comes to keep life. And sustainability matters. We need to build but we need to build a sustainable economy in a way that brings people along and brings jobs along and has those real multipliers. And the last thing, I know these are tough challenges, but they're not tough if we're all working together on them, is we need to keep the dynamism of the economy there as well, right? I mean, we have had to put big parts of the economy in suspended animation. A lot of those parts are real, these are entrepreneurs, and some of them unfortunately have already lost their businesses. Others will. But we need that regeneration of the economy, and we need to think about that in balancing it relative to those two other goals. We can do it, but once you are optimizing against this is my last point. Once you're moving against multiple goals, it just reinforces that you need business, you need government, you need community groups, you need educators, you need everybody pointing in the right direction. And those are the conversations we should be having now. Well, we're, in terms of execution, laser focused on the virus, as Doug said, and as Louis said, the vaccinations as they come.
So this is let me just building on that, and I'll ask this to three of you. I'll start with Louis. What have you been doing both professionally and personally to get through the past 8 months, and how are you planning both professionally and personally going forward?
The one of the advantages of having been in a job for a while is that when a crisis like this one, showed up in March, I had the experience of having gone through 2008. One thing I can tell you, the second crisis is not more fun than the first one. That's all I can tell you. but I think we had learned lessons. One of the things I've been trying to do at National Bank, and time will tell whether I've succeeded, is make the organization adaptable to change. And I think, resiliency is great, but you need to go further than that. You need to have an organization adaptable. And we've been working on three things. Adaptability is learning. You need a learning culture, a culture that learns from its mistakes, a culture that trains employees and, can share its information effectively with its clients. The second one is redundancy. When you have a shock, like a financial shock, if you have excess capital, excess liquidity, and excess talent, you can absorb the shock. So that's a good part of adaptability. And the third one is you can see that in Mother Nature. We can learn a lot of lessons from Mother Nature, but organisms that live for a very long time have learned to work in symbiosis with others. That's called collaboration. And that's collaboration internally, but that's collaboration externally. And that's one thing that Canada does well. It's that aspect of collaboration. So as a culture, that's what we've been trying to work on. And, that's what we feel that, when we have surprises like COVID-19, which, by the way, Mark knows this, that was certainly not in North America. I don't think that was in any of the risk management scenarios that were circulating around. I think nothing like it, at least. So when you have events like this, you need to go back to, at the end of the day, you go back to your culture. That's what the real advantage is. It's true for organizations, it's true for corporations, and it's true also for a country.
Doug?
Louis, don't give Mark any new ideas for stress testing.
It's too late.
We've already had the debate internally on our side. A few things. So to your culture point, Louis, we have really fallen back on purpose. Purpose is something that we shone the spotlight on as Dave Mackay took over. And we talk about our purpose is to help communities, clients thrive and communities prosper. And having a touchdown or a North Star when things are tough really gives you something to anchor our communications around. And mostly organically, some by instruction. The amount of over communication across the bank was really impressive. Reaching out in any way we could. There were some real themes around empathy. This was is tough on a lot of people, and really encouraging people to look out for each other, to take care of each other, to take care of themselves, to take care of clients in a different way, in an empathetic way. You may have seen, those of you who are in Canada, our ads, which we've centered around just checking in. We just have an advisor just check in with the client to see how you're doing. Can we help? Are you okay? Obviously, those who are in financial distress, we hear from before we check in. So I'd say those are some of the themes. A month ago, I would have said, I think this is going to be a really, really tough winter. People are tired. Certainly healthcare organizations are really tired, and you're coming into flu season and everything you read about. I hope the vaccine and the pace at which that's gone from sort of theory to approval to now, even our country's now able to identify some dates where there's going to be some doses. I'm hoping that will be a light at the end of the tunnel, and certainly that's what I'll be trying to steer our team towards is, okay, we have a concept for how long this can be. I don't know within a quarter, but I know we're going to get to the end of this and try to steer people, but it's been really tough. I can't say enough for, it maybe is a statement in the collective overcapacity of the economy that everybody got home and nothing really broke and the place continued to work. That was a really impressive accomplishment. But I think for me, the theme over the next number of months is going to be, let's keep doing what we're doing around communication, around empathy, around treating clients properly, around recognizing there's greater need in community than there ever has been. And we've certainly done that with our bank philanthropic activities, but also encouraging individuals, and then try to focus on hope of, the end is somewhere in sight.
Yeah.
Mark, even personally, how have you dealt with the last several months, and how are you thinking about the future?
Well, it was odd. I engineered my last day at the Bank of England to be the day before my birthday, so it was the Ides of March. It was 15th of March, and literally at 10 minutes to midnight, we did the last transaction, which is a big swap line transaction with the Fed. That was one of the necessary emergency. It was a big deal at the time, but was quickly overcome by other much bigger deals in order to do it. So, and then I, handed this this disaster over to the best person, Andrew Bailey, most capable person on the planet to deal with it. Went home and opened my laptop and downloaded Zoom, and basically been on Zoom ever since, but without direct responsibility. I mean, that's one of the things that was interesting, to be in a crisis without responsibility. So just by dint of it being a crisis and knowing people, I ended up providing a lot of advice to fellow central bankers and governments and leaders, in some cases, the IMF and World Bank. But it's different giving advice than actually taking decisions and being responsible for people. So that's, I mean, how have I handled it? I've been much busier than I expected to be during the period. I'll say a couple of things. And I've been working on for the UN, which actually was quite engaged. And I think what we were really, really enthused about is that many organizations kept their sense of purpose. And because they kept their sense of purpose, they knew that climate and dealing with sustainability was important. They had to do two things at the same time. And so actually this COVID has been an accelerant for the work we've been doing. But I'll finish by just offering a couple of just observations of what was said. One of the things in terms of preparedness, going back to whether it's stress testing or preparedness, Eisenhower had a great observation that plans are useless, but planning is essential. And this is right. Preparing for different things. In the end, what you're preparing for doesn't happen. It happened to be in the UK that we were preparing for a cliff edge Brexit for a number of years, but that preparation made it very easy to kind of flip that over into, and with some adjustments, to COVID preparedness. But I think, the sense of purpose and people to keep with the P's, staying on purpose, but really reaching out to people up and down the organization, understanding how difficult it is, even for those of us who have all the advantages in terms of all the advantages in this situation, but it's still difficult, and then recognizing it's that much worse for others. And then the last thing I'll emphasize, and I know because everyone I can see on the screen, not just on the panel, lives this, is you've got to be local as well as global, and so local community, your neighbors, being connected that way in these situations it's just the right thing to do, but it's also incredibly important because it gives you a grounding. It's not abstract, it's real, and we've got to keep that. Last point. I always say it's last point, but there's always a point.
You're welcome to keep speaking. It's great.
Which is one of the things we've been reminded of is how virtue grows with practice. And so the act of volunteering in community is self-reinforcing for the individual, but also for those around you. And I think that, again, it's, this is a group, and the UNA is a prime example of this, of the benefit of that type of commitment. But it's a lesson for us all of the importance of continuing to live that and have it spread.
Doug and Louis, you guys speak with business leaders across this country every day. What should Canadian business leaders be doing now to be ready for the post-COVID economy? Louis, you could start.
No, Doug should start. That's his turn.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, well, liquidity turns out to be pretty important as the lesson of almost every crisis, right? But that people have probably got that down. I think and it's tough to generalize across industries, but if I had to pick some things, I'd say a real focus on how your client wants to interact with you going forward, right? Our industry was on a path towards becoming digital. We all had roadmaps as to the transition from branch-based service delivery to online, and it has taken at least a step function change, and we're still debating whether there's a slope change as well as it's the step function. So, thinking through any assumptions you've made before about how the client's going to interact with you, how they're going to express their desires, how they're going to buy things. I'll give you a bit of a silly example, which is my 21-year-old son who's had some health problems that are now been solved, so he's fine, but he went 8 or 9 months seeing doctors and scopes and tests. And we later found out that the gastric syndrome he's got he had 14 of the 14 symptoms that define this illness. if someone had given him an app 8 months earlier and said, track what you're feeling, as opposed to relying on someone who's 21 to tell a human that they barely met over a video exchange, that would have been diagnosed in a month. And so maybe that's a comment on general practitioners modifying their practice, but I think is a much broader comment on what people, and there's a generational element to it, how they will communicate, what they will signal to those with whom they're interacting digitally versus what they will signal the old-fashioned way.
Louis?
Oh, yeah, I agree with Doug. I think digitization is very important. I go back to my points about the adaptable organization. I won't repeat them, but I think it's valid for governments, for large enterprises, and for small businesses to focus on talent and people constantly. That is one of the big advantages that Canada has. We have extremely high quality immigration, and I am very happy to see that the Canadian government is looking not only to maintain the level of immigration, but also to increase it post-COVID, because God knows we're going to need it. We already have, in some areas in Quebec, despite the COVID situation, we have a lack of manpower, and that will continue. So making sure we attract talent within our country, within our organizations. And the other thing too is, as Marcus said, we need to get a little bit more global in Canada. There's not, despite the fact that our cultural and gene pool is one of the most global, we still don't have an easy tendency to go global in our businesses. And we do, and we have successes, but it's not as broad as it should be. And it's still some negative reaction to Canadian organizations going globally. I can tell you stories about us going to Cambodia, and the first 3 or 4 years, all the rotten vegetables on Bay Street, that had to dodge because we had made the decision to go into an emerging market, which turned out to be quite, doing very extremely well. But, everywhere we've gone, people want to do business with Canada. We have North American expertise, and we're not the Americans.
Yeah.
And on that basis, so whether you're small, large, or big, let's go more global. We have a free trade agreement with Europe that we're not using. Hopefully we'll have easier relations with the US. Hopefully the US will restart the TPP, and we may have an agreement also with the UK. So
Mark, let's build on that. Post-COVID, which economies are best positioned to take advantage of a post-COVID economy, and where should Canadian business leaders be looking around the world?
Well, look, I think regionally, Asia's emerging strong from this for a variety of reasons. It had tailwinds going in general, have handled the virus better. The acceleration of digitization in many of those economies it reinforces some advantages there. And I just reinforce, we should be obsessed about deepening our relationships with, when I say I mean India, I mean Vietnam, I mean Japan. It very quickly gravitates to China for obvious reasons, but this is enormous opportunities, and obviously we have challenges with China as most do. We have a tremendous reputation in the region, and it's deserved, but we're not building on it to the extent we can. So, okay, fine, that's water under the bridge. Let's move forward. I think as well, one of the things that will probably happen, I'll make this my last comment, but from the new US administration, is there will be some focus on, let's call it a values-based commercial policy, foreign policy, and think about values around data privacy, technology, there could be an element of that cooperation around climate. But part of the reason on this is there are lots of reasons for sustainability, making progress on that. But one of them is trade and sustainability. That Venn diagram is going to get, the overlap is going to be pretty big. And so the climate effort is going to need to be there. So what do we contribute to that? How do we fit in? Obviously, to the extent, and I know it sounds like a superhero thing, League of Democracies or Justice League or some sort of approach like that. But there will probably be something like that. And with some variable geometry, to use a UN type phrase, around whether it's on technology stacks, whether it's on cyber, whether it's on data, whether it's on climate. So we should be in all those, but we have to work for it, and it has to be quite deliberate in order to get there. And again, that public-private cooperation. I think is the bell tolling for us?
I've got one more very important question that I want to put to the three of you. The world has many challenges today. Are you optimistic about the future of Canada, Western economies? And we've got a number of younger folks that have been sponsored who are watching us today. What advice would you have for a young person starting their career in the middle of this crisis? So optimistic about Canada and the Western world, and what advice do you have to a young person starting out? Why don't we start with Louis this time?
Yes, I am. And I've said that all along. Our main operational focus remains on Canada, despite our investments abroad, because we do believe in the long-term future of the Canadian economy and Canadian society. As I said earlier, we have great natural resources. We have a great immigration policy. I think we have we still have a social contract in this country that works. So all these things, I think it makes us extremely well positioned. We have the talent, so we can navigate climate. I think we can navigate the technology changes and even the geopolitical side. And I think we can do that very well. For the young people, what I would say is what has helped me in my professional career, has been living my passion. I do on a daily basis what I really love, and make sure that's what you do. Find your passion, and that's what it should be on your day-to-day basis.
Doug?
But I assume, Louis, that does not involve dodging vegetables.
It does occasionally. Depending on your decisions.
How can you not be optimistic, right? Use immigration as a guide, right? You use smart, educated people from all over the world, and where do they want to go? And that's, I think, that's a pretty useful proxy. I think by nature, we can stare into our half-empty glass and get caught up a little bit in it, a little bit too much. And there's a lot to say about Canadian society. Having lived in the States, one of the things I say about American society is their ability to bounce back, their ability to be resilient, to be back on the streets after 9/11 and so many other examples. I think we could use a little bit of that. But I think you have to be optimistic. This is a great place to live and a great place to do business. On the advice, look, I interviewed, well, this will be a financial history lesson for younger people who may not have been alive, but I interviewed for my first banking job in the fall of '87, which was the October '87 was a stock market crash. And I remember the placement agent back then, pre-internet, literally with a thumbtack had the job postings up on a bulletin board and outside the counselor's office. And I remember standing there watching the counselor come up and tearing down all the job offers as firm after firm was pulling their job offers. And the same are true of graduating classes in prior recessions. You will get through it. Be patient. You will have more careers in your life than any of the panelists had in their lives, other than perhaps Mark, who changes every few years. So expect it to be changing, but you'll get through it, and there'll be plenty of opportunity.
Thanks for that, Doug. You reminded me, my third day of articling was 9/11. We got through it too. Mark, we're going to give you the last word. Optimistic and advice for the for our young viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. Join my colleagues. Optimistic. Look, I'm optimistic for the democracy I think you gave, but very optimistic for Canada. And I would add to that, I think a sense of responsibility. And let me explain that. I'm optimistic because we're seeing, part because of the response to the COVID crisis, partly because what we're seeing on climate. Because what we're seeing on climate, and it's taken a long time, but effectively societies around the world, people getting together, led in many cases by the youth, but not exclusively, is saying, we want this dealt with. Okay, basta, enough. Let's transition to net zero. And we're getting our society organized, countries getting organized around that. And guess what? Once you decide what you value, what you really value, you don't end up trading off planet for profit. You end up saying, we're going to get to this objective, and human creativity, innovation, investment, the market, organizes itself to deliver it. And that's what's we're in the process globally of doing. And it just shows the power of values when you have a hierarchy of values, and then the power of the market and human creativity in order to get there. And I just think that's an example. And so to go back to Canada, I came back here because I'm Canadian, but because of the values of the country, the strength of the country. And when I say we have a responsibility, it's partly projecting those values, bringing those values, living those values globally. I mean, we get the benefit of them, and it's fantastic. And to some extent, we can take comfort in them, but we should project them out as well, and make the world, and it is overused, but the world more like Canada. It will make the world a better place. It'll be better for Canadians as well, but it'll be better for the world. And through maybe I'll just as we hand it back to our hosts, that's part of what organizations like the United Nations Association do, which is inspire Canadians in order to do that, inspire others to do that, and to project out. And that is the best spirit of the UN.
Well, Louis, Doug, thank you very much for joining us. And Mark, congratulations to you and your family on this award. And back over to you, Kate.
Thank you very much, Walid, for steering that very, very interesting conversation. I'm actually going to ask another eminent colleague for just a comment on this conversation. But I'm going to take the privilege of the podium if I can, because of course, part of my job is advocacy, and I'm going to advocate to you and those with us. I happen to co-chair something called the National Youth Serving Alliance. And I will tell you, hearing optimistic words about the future of young people dealing with the impacts of COVID is very heartening for me. We've recently done some polling of young people concerned really about a lost generation. Interesting, you'll be elevated to know that many of these young people who are dealing with suddenly this is a huge shift back to living with their parents. Young adults themselves, will this stay? These are indicators that, again, as civil society we see. But interesting, these young people are also concerned about others. Their priorities are homelessness in others. They're worried about their peers, but they're coping with real mental health issues. And I feel, and in fact, you can be darn sure that I'm going to share with you the talented young people who have been on this call, so you can think about them. I want to tell the young people on this call who have been working with us in various programs on all of these issues, the international issues, to think about careers in finance. Listen to me, if you've done political science or environmental studies, I would say if you're a poet or an artist, that sector needs you as well. And I hope I'm seeing nodding from my colleagues. The idea, for example, that political science could do and historians could do good analysis. That's what we need to ignite our economy as well. And so as I shared, I'm happy to share back with you the value your research provides to a civil society organization. RBC has recently done a study on women being left out, partly being impacted more intensely by COVID. I happen to think that there are some solutions around fintech, finding ways that we can enhance, whether it's part-time employment, around childcare when women are leaving the market and so on, to actually do what we're all talking about and mark the subtitle of your book, which is Building Back Better. So, of course, I've taken this moment of the platform, but importantly, I'm going to ask the fourth global citizen of UNA Canada, who's joined us as well, Terry Hoy from Concord Pacific, to give us some sense about what you've just heard, Terry, and what you'll be taking from this conversation.
Well, thank you, Kate. Thank you for all your work that you've done over the years for UNA and advancing Canada's relevancy in the world. Well, given Mark's strong connection to finance and banking, I actually like to ask this question, right? It's one of my favorite dinner dinner table question. I ask my friends usually, what is the biggest cause of green energy projects? So, we are involved in probably 20, 30 green energy projects, right? And if I look at my cash flow, right? We don't pay for wind, we don't pay for sunlight, we don't pay for hydro. All the money is going back to pay for capital costs, and it's debt and equity. So the money, the cash flow is mostly going back to interest. So and with everything is all the energy price all correlated to interest. And I can tell you that all the projects probably won't go ahead if we have interest rate in the teens. And I think there's no better time to actually build green energy projects. And I echo the view of Louis and Doug and Mark, about COVID. All the challenges and the innovation required and the intelligent risk-taking that's required as Canadian. It may be our strong suit to take risks, but we'll see. I think COVID is a transform accelerator. I think other than transformational digitization of the world, online shopping, all the rest, perhaps another area of transformation could be that which transition our antiquated energy infrastructure of the world into what has to happen. Perhaps it's one of those horse buggy transformation that has to happen. The COVID is about reading this. There's a chance to read out what we should not be continue doing and do what we should be doing. So I think combined with the low interest rate, I think there's no better time to build more of this, to renovate our energy infrastructure, our back engine of our system and economy. So I can talk a lot more about how finance is tied to environmental initiatives, but I think it's very timely given Mark's background and his global name recognition. I'm sure he'll continue to be a good ambassador to advance the environmental initiatives around the world. And I think, contrary to advice, I think we'll continue to take the former Bank of England governor, Bank of Canada governor seriously. And I'm sure no one will take a picture down. And congratulations, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry.
Thank you very much, Terry. Congratulations once again, Mark. Thanks to all of you for being here. I'm only sorry that we won't now have leave our dessert and have further conversations, but I hope this has been as edifying for those watching as it has been for us, really fully engaged. Mark, you've made your mark in the world. We're looking to you and a brighter future. I thank you very much, including the speakers, for giving us a sense of optimism at a time where it can be challenging to feel optimistic. Our 2020 Global Citizen Laureate, Mark Carney. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everyone.